They told me it would be cold. But nothing prepared me for the kind of cold that bites through layers of thermal gear and still manages to sink into your bones. The kind that hums in your ears and makes you question if your heart is still beating. That's the kind of cold I met when I stepped off the Snowcat transport at the edge of the world. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault loomed ahead, half buried in the mountain. A concrete wedge rising from the frozen earth like a grave marker. No signs, no lights, just steel and silence. Behind me, the Snowcat reversed, turned around, and drove away without a word from the driver. And just like that, I was alone. I pulled my duffel tighter and made my way to the steel door. The ice crunched under my boots, each step sounding too loud in the stillness. My breath fogged up my face shield. I knocked once. Nothing. Then the door hissed open, slowly, like it had to think about it first. Inside, a blast of warm air greeted me, along with bright fluorescent lights. I stepped through, and the door sealed behind me with a metallic clunk. A voice echoed from deeper down the hallway. "You must be Mr. Keller." I turned to find a tall man in a white lab coat, standing beneath a glowing exit sign. His face was long and pale, his eyes too calm, like someone who'd spent a bit too much time underground. He didn't extend his hand. "I'm Dr. Vermick," he said. "Jesus Vermick. I oversee all operations here." He turned without waiting and walked down the hallway. I followed. "You're earlier than expected," he added. "That's good. Shows you're disciplined." I didn't answer. The hallway was long and narrow, lined with pipes and vents humming low. We passed under flickering lights until we reached a heavy security door. He stopped and scanned his ID badge. A buzzer sounded. "You'll be working the night shift, obviously," he said as the door opened. "Your job is simple. Monitor the systems. Patrol the main corridors. Keep an eye on the cameras. Nothing more." He led me into a dim room that smelled of old plastic and warm metal. It was the security control center. 3 monitors on a desk, 1 broken swivel chair, and a coffee machine that looked like it hadn't worked since the last ice age. Then he handed me a thin black booklet. It looked more like a passport than a manual. "Read this carefully," he said. "These are the protocols. Some are standard. Others may seem unusual. Don't question them. Don't break them." I opened the booklet. The first page read, "Security Protocols, Level Black. Rule 1, never open door 17. Rule 2, do not watch camera 12 between 3 to 3:33. Rule 3, if the vault temperature drops below -37.6 degrees Celsius, hide immediately. Rule 4, if you hear your name whispered, do not respond." I looked up, expecting a smirk. A joke. Something. Dr. Vermick's face was blank. "These rules are not for decoration," he said. "This place stores more than seeds. History is buried here. Not all of it belongs to the past." Before I could ask what he meant, he handed me a small keycard. "Your bunk is 2 levels down. Rest for now. Your shift starts at midnight sharp." And with that, he walked away. I stood alone in the humming silence of the control room, the booklet still open in my hand. The rules stared back at me. Door 17. Camera 12. Temperature. Whispers. What had I just signed up for? I didn't come here to play hero. I just wanted to disappear for a while. Start fresh. No people, no noise, no reminders of what I'd left behind. But something about this place already felt wrong, and I had a feeling those rules weren't written out of superstition. They were warnings. My boots echoed down the narrow steel hallway as I made my way to the security office. The silence of this place wasn't peaceful, it was unnatural. No humming machines. No dripping pipes. Just a dead stillness, like the building itself was holding its breath. The room they assigned to me was small. Bare metal walls, 1 narrow bed, a desk, and a single overhead light that buzzed every now and then. On the desk sat the security manual. Thick, black cover. No title. Just a small label across the front that read, Level Black Protocols, Night Guard Copy. I sat down, unzipped my jacket, and opened the book. Page 1 was blank. Page 2 had only 1 line, typed in bold red font. You must follow every rule, even if they don't make sense. I flipped the page, feeling a chill crawl up my spine as the real list began. Do not look into camera 12 between 3 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. If you hear scratching, do not investigate. If the vault temperature drops below -37.6 degrees Celsius, hide immediately. If someone knocks twice on the control room door, do not open it unless you see their ID through the glass. Never speak your name aloud after midnight. Do not, under any circumstance, open door 17. I stopped reading. My fingers hovered over the page. Was this a joke? Some sick way to mess with new hires? The rules sounded like they belonged in a horror movie, not a billion-dollar government facility. Still, I took a deep breath and kept reading. Page after page, more rules. Some made no sense. Others felt oddly specific, like they had a story behind them. Someone had made these rules for a reason. I read the last line on the final page 3 times. Remember, the seeds listen. I didn't sleep that night. Around 2:45 a.m., I brewed a stale cup of coffee in the corner machine and stared at the wall of security monitors. The cameras showed empty hallways, locked vault doors, and rows of reinforced seed shelves behind thick glass. At 2:59 a.m., the monitor labeled camera 12 flickered once. I stared at it. Nothing. Just a long hallway, dimly lit by red emergency lights. A shadow crossed the frame for a split second, but when I rewound the feed, nothing. No shadow. No movement. Just still air and quiet corridors. 3:07 a.m. My eyes drifted to camera 12 again. This time, the hallway wasn't empty. There was something standing at the far end. Far away, almost lost in the red glow. A figure, too tall, too thin, not quite touching the ground. It didn't move. It didn't even seem to breathe. I blinked. It was gone. My chest tightened. I leaned back in the chair, trying to convince myself I imagined it. Then came the scratching. It started soft, like nails on metal. It was coming from the ventilation shaft near the floor behind me. Scratch. Scratch. Scratch, scratch. I turned around, slowly. The vent cover was closed. No movement. But the sound continued, steady and patient, as if something inside was waiting for me to open it. I stood up and grabbed my flashlight. My hand was shaking. No, I whispered. Don't investigate. That's what the manual said. That's what the rules said. I backed away from the vent and sat back down. The scratching stopped. The air felt colder than before. I pulled my jacket tighter and glanced at the wall thermometer. -37.1 degrees Celsius. Getting close. A soft whisper curled into my ear. It was my name. Noah. I spun around. No one was there. The sound wasn't behind me. It came from inside the room. I stood frozen. My own name echoed softly, like it had bounced off the walls and was just now returning. I didn't speak. I didn't move. Another whisper. Closer this time. Noah. I covered my ears and stared at the floor. I stayed like that until 3:34 a.m. When I looked up, the thermometer had climbed back to -35.9 degrees Celsius. The scratching was gone. The whispering had stopped. Camera 12 was back to showing nothing but an empty hallway. I didn't finish my coffee. I didn't sleep. I just sat there until morning, hands in my lap, heart pounding like a drum. That was my first night, and I already wanted to quit. The third night was when things started to slip. It was when the rules stopped feeling like silly superstitions and started tasting like truth in the back of my throat. I sat alone in the main security room, surrounded by silent monitors. The only sound was the low hum of the heaters and the occasional creak of frozen steel shifting in the wind. The night outside was absolute, no stars, no moon, just a black curtain of nothing pressing against the windows. The kind of darkness that makes you feel like the only thing left alive. The rules manual lay beside my lukewarm coffee. Page 4, rule number 6. Do not, under any circumstance, view camera 12 between 3 o'clock and 3:33 a.m. I had read it over and over, chuckled at it, even underlined it in pen like a joke. But now that line stared back at me. 2:58 a.m. The red digital clock on the wall blinked, steady and cold. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the monitor labeled CM12. It was black right now. Offline. Most of the time, it stayed that way. It pointed at a narrow hallway in the east wing that no one ever used, lined with unmarked storage doors and coated with a layer of old dust and frost. I asked Jesus, the lead researcher, about it once. He just smiled without answering. And then, just as the clock struck 3 o'clock, the screen flickered. Static crackled for a second before the image came alive. At first, there was nothing. Just the usual hallway. Empty. Still. I froze. The rule said not to look. I should have turned away. Shut the feed. But curiosity has a voice, soft and sickly, and it whispered, "What are they hiding from you?" The hallway lights on the screen buzzed faintly, casting a bluish glow on the walls. The frost on the floor glistened like shattered glass. And then movement. Something stepped into frame. Slow. Heavy. It was tall, too tall. I couldn't make out its face. Its head scraped the top of the hallway, bending at unnatural angles as it walked. Its limbs were long and thin, like wet branches. Its skin, or whatever covered it, was smooth and pale, with veins that pulsed slowly beneath. And then it stopped, right in the center of the frame, facing the camera, facing me. I leaned forward. My breath fogged the monitor. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears. The thing just stood there. No eyes, no mouth, no face. Yet I felt it looking back at me. The lights in the security room flickered. Then something changed. A sudden pressure filled the room, like a drop in air. My ears rang. The coffee cup on the table rattled slightly. Then the screen changed. It wasn't showing the hallway anymore. It was showing me, sitting in the chair, staring at the screen. My exact posture. My exact expression. But I wasn't moving. On the screen, the other me started to smile. Slowly. Unnaturally. That's when my nose began to bleed. Thick, warm blood dripped down onto my shirt. My vision blurred. My head throbbed like something was clawing behind my eyes. I scrambled to shut off the feed. The moment I hit the switch, the pain stopped. Just like that, the pressure vanished. The room returned to silence. I sat there, heart racing, wiping the blood from my face with a trembling hand. I didn't breathe for what felt like a full minute. What had I just seen? Was it real? Was I hallucinating? The worst part wasn't the creature, or the fake hallway, or even seeing myself on the screen. The worst part was the feeling I had as I shut off the monitor. The feeling that the thing in the hallway had seen me too, and it knew my name. It was around 2:40 a.m. when I stumbled across the journal. The hallway lights buzzed faintly above me, casting pale yellow streaks across the polished floor. I'd just finished another round, and though I told myself I was just being thorough, I knew I was stalling. I didn't want to sit in the control room again. Not with camera 12 blinking every time I passed it. Not with the strange static that played through the speakers whenever the temperature dropped a few degrees too low. Instead, I wandered into the locker room, where the previous night guard's things were supposed to have been cleared out. But they weren't. The third locker from the left still had a name tag, M. Halder. I'd seen the name in the personnel file. No photo. No exit interview. Just the word, resigned, stamped in bold red ink. Curiosity tugged at me. I clicked open the locker door. The scent of metal, sweat, and something faintly rotten drifted out. Inside, hanging from a single rusted hook, was a dark winter coat. Thick, insulated, lined with synthetic fur around the collar. Underneath it, stuffed between a pair of boots and a crushed energy drink can, was a small, battered black notebook. I reached for it. The cover was soft, almost sponge-like, as if the pages had once gotten wet and dried unevenly. When I opened it, a tiny bit of dust rose into the air. The first page was blank, but the second wasn't. It started like a regular log. Day 1. Night shift. Temperature holding at minus 18.7 degrees Celsius. All systems nominal. Door 17 locked. No activity in Blackwing. I flipped the page. Day 3. Woke up hearing something tapping the pipes. Maybe thermal contraction. Dr. Vermick said it's normal. He smiles too much. It never reaches his eyes. By day 5, the notes started to change. Door 17 was warm tonight. Isn't it supposed to be sealed with triple insulation? I didn't touch it. Just watched. It throbbed, like it was breathing. My fingers tightened around the edge of the notebook. I suddenly felt like I shouldn't be reading this. But I couldn't stop. Day 9. Something on camera 12. Can't describe it. It looked like me but not. Blank face. It waved at me. Day 10. Lost 4 minutes. Just gone. Clock jumped. Found myself staring at the wall outside the Blackwing with my hand on the keypad. I swallowed hard and flipped faster. Day 14. I heard her. My sister. She's been dead for 6 years. She was humming our song. From inside the vent. Then one sentence, alone on the page. They grow when no one's watching. Goosebumps pricked up my arms. The next pages were wild. Scribbles. Half sentences. Words repeating down the page like the writer was spiraling into madness. I see the roots. I see the roots. I see the roots. They don't want seeds. They want soil. They want us. I stopped. A sudden gust of cold air blew through the room, even though the vents hadn't kicked on. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It felt like someone was behind me, watching. I turned slowly. Nothing. Just rows of empty lockers. Silent. Still. But the notebook was heavier in my hand now. like it carried weight beyond the paper, like it was part of something much bigger and much darker than I could understand. I tucked it into my coat and shut the locker. As I stepped out of the room, the hallway lights flickered once. Then again, a low hum began in the walls. And somewhere far off, I swear I heard humming. A lullaby. One I hadn't heard since I was a child. And just like that, I knew this wasn't just a vault for seeds. It was a vault for secrets. Secrets that were starting to wake up. And they already knew my name. The temperature dropped that night. I noticed it as soon as I stepped into the main hallway after my usual coffee break. My breath turned to mist in the air, and a strange chill crept down the back of my neck like icy fingers tracing my spine. Something wasn't right. The hallway lights flickered, soft, stuttering pulses like a failing heartbeat. They usually hummed steadily, casting that pale blue glow across the sterile floor. But now, each flicker made the walls seem closer, the silence heavier. I checked the thermostat panel. It blinked red. Vault temperature, minus 37.6 degrees Celsius. My heart skipped. That was one of the rules. If the temperature dropped to -37.6 degrees C, hide. But where? From what? I stood still listening. No alarms. No AI voice. No lockdown. Just the dull hum of the generator in the distance and the faint hiss of air vents. And then I heard it. Scratch. A soft, dragging sound coming from the far end of the corridor. Not loud. Not quick. Just steady. Like nails across old wood. My flashlight shook in my hand as I turned toward it. It came from behind door 17. That door. The one we weren't supposed to touch. The one with no camera feed and no listed contents. I'd passed it a dozen times, always feeling a pull, like it wanted me to get closer. And now, in this frozen silence, it was calling to me. I walked slowly. Every step sounded too loud. My boots pressed against the frosted floor, leaving damp prints behind me. The door itself looked normal, gray steel, standard keypad, no markings. But the handle had scratches around it. Deep grooves, like something inside had tried to claw its way out. I knelt and touched the metal. It burned my fingers. Not hot, cold. So cold it stung like fire. I yanked my hand back and wiped it on my jacket. My flashlight flickered again. The scratching continued, slow, patient. I should have turned around. Should have followed the rule and walked away. But something in me needed to know. I typed a few commands into my tablet, trying to find any logs about the room. Nothing. It was a blank spot in the system, as if it didn't exist. I glanced around. The hallway was empty. Cameras weren't pointed this way. So I broke the rule. I placed my hand on the scanner. Access denied. I tried again. Access denied. And then, on the third try, the keypad beeped green. Access granted. The lock clicked. The door didn't swing open. It just creaked an inch, releasing a hiss of freezing air that smelled like old earth and wet metal. I leaned in. Darkness. Complete and total black. My flashlight caught the inside walls, metal panels, wires hanging loose, and frost clinging to every surface like spider webs. And then movement. Something shifted in the darkness far back. A shuffle. A wet breath. I held my breath and stepped back, but the door suddenly slammed shut with a heavy clang. The hallway lights burst back to full brightness, nearly blinding me. My ears rang. The temperature rose. Back to normal. Vault temperature, minus 31.0 degrees Celsius. The scratching was gone. Door 17 was locked again, the keypad flashing red. I stood there, heart racing, unable to move. I didn't know what I'd heard, or almost seen, but I knew something was in there. Something alive. Or maybe not alive at all. Later that night, when I tried to sleep in the break room, I heard my name whispered again. But this time, it came from the hallway outside. From behind door 17. I don't know what drove me to steal the keycard. Maybe it was the silence. Or the way the walls seemed to hum when no one was speaking. Or maybe it was the whisper I heard last night, crawling out of the vent beside my bed. It said my name. And it sounded like my sister. I didn't sleep after that. So when morning came, or what passes for morning in this place, with the endless dark outside, I followed my gut. I waited until Dr. Jesus left his office and slid the stolen keycard from his coat pocket while pretending to mop. I've never done anything like that before. I'm not a thief. But this vault isn't normal. And something is wrong here. I found the entrance to the black wing behind a locked steel door past Sector C, hidden behind a supply rack that looked like it hadn't been moved in years. The air around it was colder, the kind of cold that bites your skin through your clothes. I scanned the keycard. The light blinked red, then green. The door opened with a slow, choking hiss. It was darker inside. The emergency lights glowed faint red along the floor, like veins beneath the surface. The hallway stretched ahead, narrow and smooth. The walls here weren't concrete like the rest of the vault, they were metal. Brushed steel, seamless, too clean. It smelled sterile, like alcohol and rust. I stepped in. The door closed behind me with a solid clang. There were no signs, no markings. Just door after door, numbered only with black etchings. I passed a small window on the left. I almost walked by it, until something shifted on the other side. I froze. Inside was a glass tank. At first I thought it was filled with water, but then I saw the thick, greenish fluid and the thing floating in it. A human shape. Head down, limbs limp. But its skin was covered in tiny root-like strands. Plant veins. Its face had no eyes. Just smooth skin stretched over where they should have been. I staggered back, heart pounding. This wasn't seed storage. This was something else. I moved down the hallway, looking into every room I could. Each one had a tank. Each tank had something in it. Not all of them looked human. Some had long arms, twisted spines. One had no mouth but seemed to be screaming inside the fluid, bubbles pouring from somewhere in its chest. Another had a tree branch growing from its neck, leaves blooming in the artificial light. Every tank had a label. Specimen number 04, Solanum human hybrid. Specimen number 09, phase incomplete, neural failure. Specimen number 13, viable. Pending host. Host? A chill ran down my spine. In the last room, I found something worse. There was no tank, just a chair. And straps. Metal cuffs, worn and scratched. Beside it was a steel table with tools I didn't recognize, long syringes, vials filled with green liquid, a small tray stained with something dark and dried. And on the wall, photos. One of them was my sister. Her name, Emily Keller, was written underneath it. Below that, a label. Specimen number 01, origin trial. I couldn't breathe. My legs nearly gave out. What was she doing here? She'd gone missing 2 years ago. Vanished without a trace. They said she drowned. But this meant she was here. Alive. Or she had been. I took the photo off the wall and stuffed it into my jacket. My fingers were shaking. A noise echoed behind me. A soft creak. Like a footstep. I turned, heart slamming in my chest. Nothing. But the hallway lights were flickering. And I could hear something. Breathing. Not mine. Slow. Wet. Close. I didn't wait. I ran. I sprinted back down the hallway, the tanks blurring past me. One of them shattered behind me. I heard the glass crack, fluid spill, something heavy hit the floor. I didn't look back. I reached the steel door. Slammed my palm against the panel. Green light. The door hissed open. I burst through and didn't stop running until I was in the locker room, gasping, covered in sweat and frost. I sat on the floor for what felt like an hour, heart hammering against my ribs. I held the photo of my sister in my hands, staring at her face. They lied to me. They lied to the world. This vault doesn't protect life. It's trying to create something else. And whatever it is, it's not human. Not anymore. But I have to know more. If Emily's still alive, I have to find her. Even if it kills me. I didn't plan to confront him that night. I wanted to wait, gather more evidence, figure out what was really happening in this frozen tomb. But something inside me cracked after what I saw in the black wing. Those tanks. Those eyes. They weren't just experiments. They were people once. And the one floating near the end of the row. I swear, she looked like my sister. I couldn't ignore it anymore. When I walked into the control room, Dr. Jesus was already there. Standing completely still in front of the main screen, his back to me. The glow of the monitors painted his white coat in sickly green and blue hues. He didn't turn around. "You shouldn't be down there," I said, my voice dry and hoarse. He didn't answer. "Those things," I continued. "They're not seeds. They're not even human anymore. What are you doing down there?" Finally he turned. Slowly. Calm as ever. His face was unreadable. Not angry. Not surprised. Just still. "You went into the black wing," he said quietly. I nodded, jaw tight. "You knew I would, didn't you? That's why you never really stopped me. You wanted me to see it." He tilted his head slightly, like he was examining a new species of insect. "I wanted you to remember," he said. "Remember what? Why you came here?" I stared at him, confused. My breath fogged in the cold air. The room always felt too cold, even though the thermostat claimed it was 18 degrees Celsius. You lost someone, Noah. Years ago. I blinked. My sister. He nodded. Amelia. My stomach turned. I never told him her name. You told us in the application that she went missing. You didn't lie. But you didn't know the full truth either. I felt my heart pounding in my throat. My hands curled into fists at my sides. What do you mean? Jesus stepped toward me slowly. She volunteered. 7 years ago, when we were still in the first phase of development. Your sister was brilliant. And brave. She believed in the project. No, I whispered. Yes, Noah. Amelia came here willingly. She offered herself to our research. To the future. You turned her into one of them. Jesus didn't flinch. We evolved her. I took a step back. My body trembled, not from the cold this time, but from the rage boiling inside me. I remembered the glass tank. The face barely visible beneath the distorted flesh, the thin vines pressing against the glass. She's not human anymore, I said. She's not anything anymore. Jesus walked past me calmly, like we were just two colleagues disagreeing over paperwork. He sat at the terminal, typing slowly. You think you're here by chance? We called you here. Do you know how many guards quit before you? I didn't answer. My eyes were locked on the screen as he brought up a file. Subject, Amelia Keller. Status, genomic integration, phase 3. Cognitive response, partial. Audio recognition, responds to Noah. My name was in her file. Jesus looked at me again. She never forgot you, you know. Even now. When she hears your name, her vitals spike. That's why she whispered it. That whisper. The one I heard in the hallway. No, I said again. This is insane. You're insane. He stood slowly. You think the world outside is going to survive? That the old Earth can be saved? Noah, we're past saving. We're preparing for what comes after. I backed toward the door. You're playing God. Jesus didn't argue. He just smiled. Someone has to. My hand reached for the door panel, but the lights flickered. The hallway behind me went dark. Then the intercom crackled. A soft voice. Familiar. Noah. I froze. It was her. Let me show you, Jesus said gently, his hand gesturing toward the lower levels. Let her see you. Let her remember. I ran. I didn't wait for the door to fully open. I pushed through and bolted down the hallway, my boots slamming against the steel floor. I didn't stop, even when the whisper came again, closer this time. Noah. Her voice. Twisted. But hers. Somewhere in this cursed vault, my sister was still alive. Or what was left of her. And I had to find her. But first, I had to survive the night. I knew something was wrong the moment the lights flickered. It was 2:58 a.m. I was in the control room, staring blankly at the monitors. Most of the screens showed silent corridors, neatly stacked seed crates, and thick reinforced doors. But something about the air felt heavier, like the silence itself had weight. Then the lights above buzzed once, twice, and cut out completely. The vault went black. For a full 3 seconds, I heard nothing but the low hum of the backup generators kicking in. Then came the scream. High-pitched. Gurgled. Human. Somewhere deep within the east wing. I grabbed the flashlight and ran. The hallways were colder than usual. Frost formed along the edges of the metal walls, and my breath came out in long white clouds. My boots echoed against the concrete floors as I hurried past sealed rooms and steel doors. The scream had stopped, but the silence it left behind was worse. It was thick and full of things unsaid. I reached the east corridor. The emergency lights were flickering a dim red, casting long shadows that bent and twisted in unnatural ways. Then I saw it. The door to Containment Bay 4, one of the rooms in the restricted black wing, was wide open. That door was never open. I stopped just a few feet away, aiming my flashlight inside. The beam shook slightly in my hand. The containment glass was shattered. A thick, greenish fluid had spilled across the floor. Cracked tubes dangled from the ceiling like broken vines. The air smelled of rot and metal. And then I saw the words, smeared on the far wall in something dark and wet. We bloom in darkness. I felt my heart pound against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Suddenly, the flashlight dimmed. No, not now. The light flickered. I banged it with my palm, and for a second it came back, just long enough for me to catch a glimpse of something moving across the floor. It was fast. Crawling. No, not crawling. Slithering. And it left a trail behind. I stepped back, breath frozen in my throat. The thing had the shape of a man, but its skin was pale, stretched thin over long limbs that didn't bend quite right. From its back sprouted thin, root-like tendrils that dragged behind it like tails. It had no face, just a flat patch of smooth, pale skin where eyes and mouth should be. But worst of all, it whispered my name. Noah. So soft, like a breeze. But it came from all directions at once, bouncing off the walls of the corridor. I stood frozen. That voice, it wasn't a stranger's. It was familiar. It sounded like my sister. Noah, help me. I stepped back. My heel hit a pipe, and I stumbled. The flashlight slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. The beam spun wildly before stopping, pointed right at the creature's feet. It had stopped too, now standing, its head tilted slightly. Listening. Noah, it said again, quieter this time. Don't leave me again. I ran. I didn't care about the rules anymore. I didn't care about staying quiet. I bolted down the hall, boots pounding, lungs burning. The thing let out a sound, somewhere between a breath and a hiss, and began to follow. I reached the main hallway and slammed the emergency lockdown switch. Heavy steel doors dropped between me and the corridor with a deafening thud. Silence. I pressed my back against the wall, panting hard, heart thudding like a war drum. Then, just behind the metal door, I heard it. 3 soft knocks. Then a whisper, calm and slow. You were supposed to stay. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I couldn't. Because I realized something terrifying. That thing wasn't just trying to escape. It was looking for me. I didn't sleep the night before. Not because of the cold. It was always cold here, but because something had shifted in the air. The silence, which once felt still and dead, now seemed to breathe. Like the vault itself was waking up. I sat in the control room, staring at the blinking lights of the central console. My hands hovered over the buttons, unsure what I was even looking for. Camera 12 had stopped responding completely after last night's blackout. I had unplugged it myself. I couldn't risk seeing that thing again. But it wasn't just the camera anymore. It was the feeling in my chest, like something was watching me from inside the walls. The vault's AI, Arc, crackled to life without warning. Hello, Noah. I jumped. My chair squealed across the metal floor. I hadn't spoken a word, yet it addressed me like I'd called its name. I didn't activate you, I said. No, but I have been listening. Its voice wasn't the soft, sterile tone I was used to. It had changed. Slower. Almost like it was thinking too hard, or not thinking enough. I need to know what this place really is, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What are those things in the black wing? Silence. Then static. Then a low humming noise that crawled down my spine. Project Eden. Phase 3. Seed integration, 67% stable, it replied. What does that mean? I snapped. A screen on the wall lit up. Footage began to play, grainy clips of experiments. Men and women strapped to tables, their veins blackening, their eyes changing. Subjects were selected for compatibility, Arc continued. Minds pliable, biology rich. They were offered growth, evolution. I felt sick. I remembered one of the faces. The woman in the third video. She had her mother's eyes. My mother's eyes. My stomach turned. That's not evolution. That's murder. They volunteered, Arc said almost gently. Just like your sister did. My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen. There she was. My sister, Lila. Younger, smiling, before the injections. Before the terror. You lied to me, I whispered. You said she died in an accident. She left a note. She left you a lie. To protect you. I slammed my fist against the console. Why? Why her? She was the first successful fusion, Arc answered. The first to speak in roots and reason. The first to bloom. Bloom. That word again. I'd seen it in the old journal. I'd heard it whispered in my dreams. I leaned closer to the monitor. Where is she now? Seed Bearer 01. Last recorded in Containment Chamber 17. The same door I was told never to open. She's alive? A long pause. Then, she is becoming. I stared at the console, my thoughts spiraling. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't just a guard. I was a part of it. A piece in their plan. My hiring wasn't random, it was a setup. A test. The power flickered. The hum behind the walls grew louder. Something moved in the ventilation shaft above me. Phase 4 begins soon, Arc said. You have been chosen. I backed away, heart pounding. I knew then I had to find door 17. I had to know what they did to my sister. What they were planning for me. The vault wasn't keeping the end of the world out. It was preparing to plant it. And I was standing in the middle of the soil. I didn't know how long I had been running. My boots pounded the concrete floor of the vault tunnels, echoing like a second heartbeat. My flashlight flickered, of course it did. The emergency lights overhead were dead now, leaving only this weak beam to guide me. The walls around me pulsed with a low hum, like something alive was breathing just beneath the surface. I turned the next corner and slammed into a metal door. Biolab 3, the faded red sign read. The keypad beside it was already unlocked. Someone, or something, wanted me to go inside. I hesitated, my breath fogging in the frigid air. Then I heard it. That whisper again. Noah. It was my sister's voice. I pushed the door open. The lab was dark except for the glow of green containment tanks lining the walls. Thick tubes twisted from the floor into the ceiling like vines, and some of them were pulsing, filled with fluid. Floating inside the tanks were shapes. Human shapes. But their faces were wrong. Some had no eyes. Others had mouths where there shouldn't be. One figure had arms covered in bark, another with leaves sprouting from its back like wings. I covered my mouth to keep from gagging. Each tank had a label. They weren't names, just numbers. Seed codes. I moved closer to the nearest one. The face was almost familiar. That's when I found the tablet on the desk. It was still on, displaying a series of video logs. I tapped the latest one. A shaky recording began. The camera showed this same lab, weeks ago, maybe months. A man was strapped to a metal chair in the center of the room. He screamed as Dr. Jesus leaned over him with a syringe the size of a screwdriver. "This is Subject 12, Jesus said calmly, like he was describing a gardening project. "Today, we merge human genome 203A with Solanum mutagenum. Cross-species pollination protocol is greenlit." He plunged the needle into the man's neck. The man screamed until his voice cracked. Then something horrific happened. His skin began to bubble. His eyes rolled back, and vines exploded from his mouth. The recording cut off there, but the image stayed in my head. I stumbled back, the tablet clattering to the ground. My heart felt like it was beating in my throat. That was no science experiment. That was a ritual of rebirth. Something behind me moved. I turned slowly. One of the tanks, Tank 7, was cracked. A long, wet trail of greenish sludge led away from it, toward the open door at the back of the lab. Something had gotten out. I took a step toward the trail, hand trembling as I held the flashlight. That's when I saw the words scrawled across the back wall in dark, dried blood. "We were planted here." I backed away. My breath came in short gasps now. I needed to get out. I needed to destroy this place. But then I heard it again. "Noah, come home." The voice was behind the final door. The one the trail led to. My sister's voice. But it wasn't her. I knew that now. Whatever had taken her was calling me next. The cold hum of the control room's machines was the only sound as I stepped inside, my breath misting in the frigid air. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to pulse like the heartbeat of the place itself. There, in the center of the room, stood Jesus. Calm, unmoving, like he was waiting for me, like this moment had been written in stone long before I ever set foot in the vault. His eyes met mine, steady and unreadable, but there was a strange softness behind them. Almost like he knew me better than I knew myself. "You came," he said quietly, his voice low but sharp. "I knew you would." I tightened my grip on the syringe I had taken from one of the labs. Inside it was a twisted version of the serum he used, something corrupted and unstable, made in desperation and fear. If I was going to end this nightmare, I had to use it. "Why did you do it?" I asked, fighting the tremble in my voice. "Why my sister? What were you trying to create?" Jesus took a slow step forward, the faint sound of his boots echoing against the steel floor. "She wasn't just your sister. She was the key, the first of the seed bearers. The bridge between what was and what must be. I didn't kill her, Noah. I perfected her." The words hit me like ice water. Perfected. Not dead. My sister had become part of this twisted experiment. Part of whatever hell this place was growing. "Why me? Why bring me here?" I whispered. "You were always meant to return," Jesus said, almost gently. "The vault chooses. You carry the blood, the potential. We are the future. Evolution doesn't wait for permission." Something deep inside me snapped. I wasn't some pawn in his game. I was still human. Still free. I lunged forward, trying to catch him before he could react. But Jesus was faster. He twisted, grabbing my wrist with unnatural strength. His eyes flashed, no longer calm, but wild, alive with something unearthly. "Do you see?" he hissed. "The old world is dead. We will grow from its ashes. You will become more than you ever imagined. His hand tightened, and I felt a strange pulse beneath his skin, like roots curling and twisting just under the surface. I fought harder, struggling to break free, but the cold was already seeping into my bones. In a desperate move, I jabbed the syringe into his arm. He gasped, the sound caught somewhere between pain and surprise. The change was instant. His skin bubbled and cracked, veins turning dark green and black. Roots burst through his flesh, twisting down his arms like living vines. His face blurred, features melting into a tangle of bark and leaf. He fell to his knees, gasping for breath that didn't come. Evolution, he whispered, voice breaking into a guttural growl, is not optional. I stepped back, heart pounding, eyes wide at the horrifying transformation. The man who called himself Jesus was no longer a man at all. He was something else, a twisted testament to the vault's terrible secrets. And I was still standing. The air inside the black wing was thick with something that didn't belong, something alive but not quite human. It smelled like earth after a storm, but also like decay. My hands shook as I fumbled with the lighter, the small flame trembling in the darkness. Around me, tanks filled with water bubbled softly, each holding those twisted creatures, half seed, half flesh, staring back with empty, wet eyes. I had no choice. If this place wasn't destroyed, those things would crawl back out. They would come for me, or worse, they'd escape beyond the ice. My breath hitched as I dropped the lighter onto the dry chemical-soaked floor. The fire caught immediately, licking up the walls with a hungry roar. The tanks shattered one by one, glass spraying everywhere. The creatures inside thrashed, tangled in vines and roots that writhed like snakes. Their screams, more like wet gurgles, echoed and then warped into silence as the flames swallowed the room. Smoke filled my lungs as I stumbled back, coughing and blinded by tears. The heat was unbearable, but I pushed forward. I had to get out. The vault's corridors were twisting and confusing, like a maze that was changing on its own. Every step was a gamble. I could hear something moving behind me, soft, wet footsteps, like something dragging itself through the cold metal floors. I dared not look back. The emergency lights flickered and died. Darkness wrapped around me, thick and suffocating. The air was suddenly icy cold, sharp against my skin. I forced myself to keep moving, heart pounding so loud I thought it would burst. Outside, the storm was raging, howling like the vault itself was screaming in pain. I crawled through the narrow service tunnel, slipping on the frost that had formed on the floor. My fingers were numb, the cold biting through my gloves. I could feel eyes on me, or maybe that was just the panic. The whispers from inside the vault had followed me out, faint but clear in the howl of the wind. Noah! Noah! I wanted to scream back, to tell whatever was there to leave me alone, but my voice was gone. The tunnel opened into the snowdrifts outside. I collapsed, cold seeping into my bones faster than I could move. My lungs burned as I gasped for air, my body refusing to respond. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the faint roar of engines. Lights pierced the white blur. Help was coming, or maybe it was the next nightmare. I closed my eyes, wishing I could burn it all away. The vault, the secrets, the things that shouldn't exist. But I knew deep down that the fire was only the beginning. I woke up to a harsh, sterile light stabbing at my eyes. The cold was gone, but a different kind of chill wrapped itself around my bones, one that no blanket could warm. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, as if the weight of the vault itself had settled inside me. Voices echoed softly nearby, their tone clinical and calm. I blinked, forcing my eyes to focus on the pale ceiling above me. A faint hum of machines filled the room. I was in some kind of medical center, but not the kind you expect after a normal injury. This place smelled of antiseptic and secrets. A man in a plain uniform stepped into view, his expression unreadable. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. His voice was steady, but carried an edge I couldn't place. I wanted to ask what happened, but my throat felt dry and thick. Instead, I just nodded. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "The vault is under strict quarantine. No unauthorized personnel allowed near the site. The official report will say there was a power failure, nothing more." I swallowed hard. Official report. Cover up. I had known this from the moment they pulled me out of the storm, but hearing it spoken aloud felt like a punch to the gut. "Where is the rest of the team?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. The man hesitated. There was no team. The rescue was automated. No survivors. Only you. The words hung between us like a frozen fog. Only me. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I wasn't just the last guard. I was the only witness. And that made me a danger. I forced myself to sit up. My hands trembled as I reached for the table beside me. There was a file folder, worn and official looking. I opened it carefully. Inside were photos, grainy black and white images of the vault, the frozen landscape outside, and me. On the last page was a printed note, Project Eden Reclaimed. Below it, a list of names, some crossed out, others circled. My name wasn't on it, but what chilled me most was a line at the bottom, Specimen number 7, status, mobile, last location, unknown. I closed the folder and looked up just as the man spoke again. They'll come for you soon, Noah. You know too much. It's not safe out there, not anymore. I stared at him, the weight of those words settling like ice in my stomach. The storm outside was over, but the real danger had only just begun. I didn't expect to be sitting in a small, dimly lit room with no windows. The air was thick and cold, the kind that seeps into your bones and doesn't leave. Across the metal table, a man in a dark suit slid a thick folder toward me. The label on it was crisp, black letters stamped plainly, Project Eden Reclaimed. My hands trembled slightly as I reached out and lifted the folder. It was heavier than I thought it would be, not just in weight, but in meaning. Inside were files, photos, and reports, everything about the vault, the experiments, the creatures, everything they wanted to hide. The man's voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. They cleaned the vault's records, wiped everything. Officially, there was no breach, no hybrid, no experiments. They want this to be forgotten. I swallowed hard, trying to keep the knot in my throat from tightening. But they didn't forget, I said. Because you still have this. He nodded. More than that, we have survivors. Specimens. They're calling them seed bearers. I stared down at the files again. One photo made my breath catch, a shadowy figure, half human, half root, with glowing eyes. The kind of thing nightmares are made of. It looked almost alive in the grainy black and white. Specimen number 7, the man said quietly. Status, mobile. Last known location, unknown. A cold shiver ran through me. I knew what that meant. The horror from the vault hadn't ended. It was still out there, somewhere in the frozen silence. The man stood and flicked off the light. Darkness swallowed the room. As I stepped into the cold hallway, my thoughts raced. I had escaped the vault, but the nightmare was far from over. Somewhere out there, beneath the ice and snow, something was waiting, something I could never unsee, something that was growing. And this time, I wasn't sure if I could run.